This is a Film Stories original podcast.
We made this.
Welcome to the Starlight Ballroom. Hey!
Hello everyone and welcome to Shipwrecked and Comatose, a Red Dwarf podcast here on the We Made This podcast network. It's obviously a very special as I'm leading today. I am Bryan and I am joined by my co-host for this, a slightly ill Mark Adams. Hello Mark.
Hello, I've got a lemsip and by the time we've edited this, there will be lots of coughs that have been edited out. But I'm here to talk about a lovely film.
Yep, what we're here to talk about today is the 2000 horror film, The Asylum, directed and written by Jon Stewart, not that one, and starring a variety of people, including Red Dwarf's own Chloe Annett.
It does have Red Dwarf's own Chloe Annett, but my goodness, what a cast. We've got Ingrid Pitt, we've got Robin Asquith from the Confessions of films. Remember them? Boobies.
Yep.
We've got Colin Baker, the fucking Doctor, Paul Reynolds from Press Gang, who didn't really do much else other than Press Gang, Jean Boat, who was Ma Boswell in Bread, and last but not least, Robin Parkinson, who was one of the two Leclercs in LOLO. I got excited at the cast, and then I had to watch the film.
Yes, the lead is Stephanie Pitt, who is Ingrid Pitt's daughter.
She did bugger all after that, though.
She did. She didn't do a great deal. A lot of people you'll find on this film didn't do a whole heck of a lot, especially crew, like writers and directors. This is the first time directing for Jon Stewart. He's primarily a cinematographer. And he didn't do a lot after this. Although the thing that made me feel old, and we talked about this, it made us feel slightly old, is Patrick Mower, who is one of those actors who's been in pretty much everything, is probably known best now for being in Emmerdale as a character called Rodney Blackstock. And he did this and then went into Emmerdale, where he still is to this day, 24 years later.
That's a long time. And for me, the year 2000, it's like, that feels like my adult life, so it doesn't feel like that long ago. 24 years is a long time.
It's half a Ken Barlow.
Wow.
So yes, we are talking about The Asylum today. It was not cinematically released, and by the way that it's shot, it has a lot of fades in and out, which makes me think it was made for television. I'm not sure what channel. It has a very sort of early Sky, before it was Sky sort of feel to it, but this is in the year 2000.
It could be ITV or Channel 4.
Yeah.
Well, you know those ITV dramas they used to do?
Yes. It is very heavily influenced by the 70s sort of hammer horror, tales of the unexpected kind of films. It's quite low budget, which you can see in the quality of the actual shooting itself, but it is quite interesting. I'll admit that when I first sat down to watch it, I messaged Mark after about 10 minutes saying, I'm only 10 minutes in and I wish that there was a playback speed button on this because I found the beginning to be quite slow.
It's okay. As horror films go, I have seen much worse, both in production quality and in entertainment value. But I have seen things with this amount of budget or significantly less that have entertained me significantly more. It was fun, it was there, and I didn't hate it. I think it's well worth a look if people haven't watched it yet. And if you haven't, the place to watch it at the moment is Plex. Fair warning, lots of ads.
I didn't have a problem with that myself, but that's because I may have had a certain blocker switched on my browser. But, that could have been it, or I just could have got lucky.
Oh, is that what it is, Carl? I mean,
what it is.
Using an ad blocker it involves skill, which I don't have.
It's a bit cheeky, admittedly, but it did make the experience a lot better for me. And I still got some adverts, just not every 15 minutes like you did.
Horrendous.
Still, Plex is a good service. We have found some more Chloe Annett work on there because of looking on that, which we'll be doing eventually. And we've also found some Chris Barry and Danny John Jules, I think, and Robert Llewellyn work as well. So it's pretty good for finding these things.
Yeah, it's a means to an end. It's kind of acknowledged that, yeah, get it watched on there rather than watch it illegally would be the better option.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, it's no different from, as time of recording, Prime have just introduced adverts.
Motherfuckers.
Yeah, even though they had Freevee, which is basically Prime with adverts, so it's quite odd. And they have Neighbours. But moving on, The Asylum, it was just before the British horror resurgence that sort of started in 2001 with films like 28 Days Later.
I suppose it was, yeah.
Yeah, it was just that little bit too early. It might have got a bit more press if it had come out after that point, because people had their eyes on British horror, like Dog Soldiers was early 2000s. So it looks like it, timing-wise, it may have got slated, but timing-wise, it probably would have got a few more eyes on it if it came out about a year or so later. The tagline of the movie is awful, as we agreed on. Its corridors are as twisted as the minds contained within.
Yeah, that's crap. Do you know what a good tagline is?
Go on.
Chucky gets lucky.
It is. It's short. It's punchy. It rhymes.
I might be biased. Just a bit.
That is a good tagline. Yeah, there's some cracking taglines in horror, and this isn't one of them. So, let's go through the film here. Now, there are going to be spoilers throughout this, so if you haven't seen the film and want to see the film, do go on Plex and find it. But we are going to talk about things going on because it's not going to make a lot of sense if we... Basically, there's a few running themes through this which make more sense once you've seen the film. Is that fair to say?
I'd agree with that.
So we begin with a long, spooky corridor. We are going to see this corridor a lot during the film.
Well, at least they referenced it in the tagline.
Yep, absolutely. This film, I think, double-checking, I watched this twice in order to get ready for today. There seems to be about 4 corridors that get used a lot. I think they use it to try and describe how much of a maze it looks like. However, by about 2/3 of the way through the film, you do kind of feel like, yeah, you only had 3 corridors, didn't you?
Yeah, and I think that's what we've said earlier, that their budget was clearly quite low.
Apparently it was shot in a disused mental hospital. Colin Baker has said it was shot in one, and that's the only behind-the-scenes fact I can find.
Okay, that's kind of cool.
I'm guessing a lot of the building was unusable in terms of health and safety.
Yeah.
Or there wasn't a health and safety, and Colin Baker took one look and went, no, I'm not going down there.
Fair.
I didn't even do my own regeneration. I'm not doing my own stunts.
Yeah, because this was when Colin Baker was kind of, please, can I have some work?
This sounds horrible to say, but it is true. He is the poorliest aged of all the doctors. It's fairly safe to say. I've met him. He's lovely. But he's the one doctor who doesn't kind of look like he could leap, even though that he could leap back into being the doctor. He looks way different from what he did then. Unless you put a wig on him, which would look fantastic.
I mean, the thing is, some people will always look quite similar. I shave my head at 27 and I don't look much different, really.
Yeah.
Whereas blonde curly locks, they don't last.
No, sadly not. I mean, we're both bald and we're both timeless beauties.
It's true. It's true. I mean,
I've known you about 10 years now, and you've barely aged.
Thanks.
You sometimes have more stubble than not, and that's about it.
Yeah.
I still get mistaken for someone about 10 years younger, which is always a tremendous ego boost for me.
Who doesn't like a tremendous ego boost?
Exactly. I maintain that fat don't age.
That's not quite as catchy as the other catchphrase we're not going to use.
Yeah. Right then. So yes, we begin in the spooky corridor. We hear a child's voice screaming for their mummy. Then we switch to a first-person point of view where a woman walks in on what looks like a sort of 70s Art Deco stage. She's doing up her robe, and you can see lingerie, or as Rick Mail would say, lingerie, underneath. And I've written down in my notes here, obvious shagging has occurred.
See, I didn't realise that, but I don't really look for straight sex.
No. I thought this was Margie Clark. Initially, I was like, wow, this is a packed cast. But I don't believe it is. It's not Margie Clark, but it did look like it. So she has the pin-up of the blonde curly hair, the big red lipstick. It's all very sort of 50s kind of pin-up. The woman walks towards us and says, hello, darling, what's the matter? Only to be stabbed to death in a very psycho-influenced series of jump cuts. You don't see the knife go in, you just see screaming faces and the knife sort of moving. So it's showing its influences very, very early on here.
Yeah, I mean, Psycho will never be beaten for getting that scene right, but I thought this was quite fun. And, you know, within 2 minutes, a bit of matricide, that was quite shocking. It's not...
Yep.
Yeah, it's an interesting start. Yeah.
It's something we'll see throughout the film as well, is while there's a lot of death, it's not that gruesome. We don't have any really brutal death scenes in it. It's all very, like I say, that 70s style. And I quite like that, actually, because sometimes you can go super gruesome, but for something like this, it's not necessary. This is revealed to be a nightmare suffered by Jenny, who is Stephanie Pitt, that we mentioned earlier. And because she's been screaming and yelling and tossing and turning, she's woken up her sister Rose, played by the lovely Chloe Annett.
We are delighted to see Chloe Annett. She is the reason why we are doing this film, and she's in it for about 7 minutes max.
Yeah. She also wakes up in the middle of the night with perfect hair and what appears to be perfect makeup.
True.
But it's great because she is a stunningly beautiful woman. So oddly, though, that the two of them share a room like teenage girls.
Yeah, that's not really explained because they're clearly not teenagers.
No, Chloe Annett herself is 29 at this point, and I believe Stephanie Pitt is older. So, yeah, it's not fully explained. There's a very odd family dynamic going on, which we'll see throughout this.
Yeah, it was odd from the beginning. It's not just this particular aspect that's odd. It's like all of it's odd.
Yeah. Rose asks Jenny if she's having the dream about killing her mum again. Jenny's shocked because she says she's never told Rose about that dream. Rose tells her, though, that she yells about it all the time, including the knife and the blood, and she never gets a good night's sleep because of this. I mean, you'd move into a different room, wouldn't you? You would.
You'd sleep on the sofa.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what I like it here is Chloe Annett uses the word Christ as an expletive. And if we didn't clock that this film already was British, it's very British, isn't it?
It is. It is very British. Very sort, as I said, it's that very Hammer horror sort of British, where everyone's a bit posh. As we find out in this, even the junkies are slightly posh.
Yeah. And I find, some of the acting not so good. Chloe Annett, I may be biased at this point. Who knows? But I thought she was pretty good.
Yeah. There's some people in this who are awful. Stephanie Pitt isn't particularly great as the lead. And my what if for this film is, what if Chloe Annett was the lead and Stephanie Pitt was the sister?
Yeah, I'd have preferred that, actually.
Yeah, that would have been a thing. Part of me wonders if the reason they managed to get Ingrid Pitt and Stephanie Pitt was Ingrid Pitt going, well, my daughter's the lead, yes.
Yeah, it does feel a bit like that.
I'll be in it if I get to act against my daughter. We fade out, and then we fade back into seeing Jenny looking over the edge of something. We get the reveal that she's on top of a clock tower and she's looking to jump. Underneath, we see loads of people that are all in, medical facility whites, relaxing in the grounds. They spot her standing on top of the tower, and while the staff are telling her to not jump, all the patients think it's funny and encourage her to jump, which leads for Jenny to jump.
Yeah, that was grim as well.
Yeah. I felt a bit weird on this because when I saw all the patients wearing white, I was like, oh, it's a mental institution. And I'm not quite sure where that came from or what sort of, I think maybe One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest or something like that. Just when you see them all in white, you think, oh, mental patients. But yeah, there also appears to be only 2 staff for the entirety of this asylum.
Yeah.
So yeah, the way that they show Jenny jumping is, from a technical standpoint, what I believe it is is the camera's on a rope and it gets dropped over the side of the building.
Right. Good.
And then it cuts to the actress blatantly, the camera's on the ground and she takes a run up and flips over the camera. Even on the shot, she's not falling up to down. She's going right to left, which I just noticed that from a technical standpoint was quite funny.
Yeah, it's not great. The plot's fine.
Yeah.
But it's not great.
It just makes me chuckle because I do come from that background of filmmaking, and when you see these things, you go, it's just these are just like little things where you go, oh, if you'd spent about 2 minutes more thinking about this, you'd have got it. Anyway, this is revealed to be another dream, a lot of dreams in this, that Jenny is relaying to a psychiatrist, Dr. Adams, played by Patrick Maurer. Dr. Adams reveals Rose has told him she's been dreaming about her mother's death again, which was like, oh, okay, I didn't realise that could be done. Jenny's not very happy about this, but he comforts her by saying it's not unnatural to be thinking about that. Jenny then walks up and embraces him from behind, which is a little weird.
Yeah.
Until we realise that this is her father.
I feel like this is quite unethical. Your therapist should not be your dad.
I mean, there's, trying to save a bit of money, and then there's seeing your own father as a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
Although Jenny does lament that she wishes that he didn't treat her like any other patient. Although that's probably a boon on his part that he is treating her like any other patient. He's trying to be professional.
Yeah. It's just odd to me.
Yeah. We'll see this in what Dr. Adams does in the next scene. It's like something very odd is happening in this family. Because we see Jenny and Rose are waiting to have dinner. Dr. Adams hasn't arrived yet. They do a very childish game where they take it in turns to steal bits from his dinner, which again made me think, how old are these girls supposed to be?
Also, I don't get decanters. They've got a decanter. Why do people have decanters?
Oh, we had decanters in my house growing up.
But why? What's it do? You have a bottle that you transfer the bottle to the bottle. I don't understand.
Yeah, it's more of a display thing than anything else. We had whiskey in ours, which was when I first tried whiskey as a child.
I just never got decanters.
They were quite pretty. But it's just one of those things that maybe it's that thing of you put them in the decanter so your kids don't touch them because they know not to touch the fancy crystal bottles.
Maybe. I quite liked the camera work around the dinner plates and then the fade into the flashbacks. Oh, that's another thing I quite liked about the film, was that the flashbacks were grainy.
Yes.
They were quite clever. That was quite clever. Simple, but quite clever.
Yeah. So after they've done this bit of stealing food, Dr. Adams arrives. He tells Jenny that he's going to tell her more about her mother like she wants. When Jenny asks why she is only going to be shown and not Rose, Rose says she just wants to forget, while her father massages her shoulders in a very pervy way. There's no better way of saying it.
It's weird.
Yeah, it's very laying on thick that Dr. Adams is a bit weird and probably a baddie. There's definitely that feeling that he's probably a baddie. Yes, Rose says she just wants to forget, and then ominously says, but that's not where their father is going to let them do. Which is an odd one. Although when we come back later, that probably makes a bit more sense.
Yeah.
So far the things we're getting is Dr. Adams is a bit of a odd dad, and the girls are blatantly in some massive trauma where they think they act and behave much younger than they actually are.
Yeah, so it's either well done that they behave like children even though they're adults, or they've been miscast.
Yes, definitely.
I'm not 100% sure which one it is.
No, I'm not either. We'll say soldier on. So they're watching 8mm films from the childhood, and Jenny states that their mother was repeatedly stabbed, but the police didn't do anything. To which she's told that because they lived in an asylum with 440 patients, it could have been any one of them, but the police decided whichever one of them it was already under lock and key, so they just left it at that.
Again, they wouldn't leave it at that.
No. It's a very convenient way of policing. Like, well, they're already locked up. So, I mean, what are we going to do? Lock them up for murder? While Jenny asks her dad if she thinks a patient did it, Dr. Adams very dramatically says there was one other option, but he doesn't want to look into it any further. Now, are you at the stage I am at this point, which is it's Chloe Annett?
No.
You're not?
No, I'd assumed it was Ingrid Pitt's daughter.
Right, okay. I really had it as like, maybe I've watched too much horror in my life, but I was like, oh, it's Chloe Annett. But then we leave the family for now as we see a fortune teller, and a very stereotypical one, with the headpiece, the big earrings and everything like that. She is Isabella, played by legendary actress Ingrid Pitt. She's doing a family, including, I've written here, Mark's favourite cameo in the whole film, the mum from Bread.
And that's the thing. All these actors that I mentioned at the start, massively just cameos, isn't it?
Yeah.
Up to and including the Doctor.
Everybody in it is blatantly, apart from sort of like your main 2 or 3, or are just one scene.
Like you said about how you get these actors in for their name value and then...
It doesn't add anything to the film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could have been anyone playing that character.
Yeah. There's a very famous example, which is the film How to Stop Being a Loser. It's got Richard E. Grant listed on the DVD case and poster. He's on, there's a picture of him on there. I think he's like second on the bill, but he kills himself in the trailer.
Wow.
So it's an interesting way of doing it. I think it's got a bit more subtle as years have gone by, but some of these ones are... It's like there was a film filmed in Derby, where I live, which had one scene with Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Jean-Claude Van Damme went to Derby?
Yes, he did. And he filmed a scene in Derby in a nightclub, which everyone was a bit confused about, and then they realised his daughter was playing one of the leads.
A bit like Ingrid Pitt here.
Exactly. So Ingrid Pitt is doing a reading for a family, including the mum from Bread and Leclerc from LOLO. She gets caught out lifting the table with her foot to make the table rock because the spirit's in touch. But she manages to cold read the name Nora, which her husband recognises, but the wife's livid because it's the ex-wife.
I feel like as depictions of mediums go, I like it, but I wouldn't I?
They storm out and Isabella sits at a table and takes a hip from her hip flask. And suddenly she starts seeing a pattern of lights in her crystal ball. She's elated at this, as this makes her believe that she does have some form of power. All I was thinking was, that's some good booze in that hip flask. Because she's immediately seeing things.
I've never understood why booze is used in that way in films. It's not mind-altering like certain psychedelic drugs.
Yeah.
I've never been anything other than incapable, rather than completely and utterly deluded whilst drunk.
I mean, with this, the thing we'll notice is a lot of the people who are suffering from these patterns of lights that we see throughout the film all have a vice of some kind or trying to get away from it. Isabella's appears to be booze. Neville, who we meet later, is a drug addict, which he uses to try and escape from it.
That one's understandable.
Yeah. And we meet Father Matthew later on, who doesn't have any vice to get out of it and tries to end his life to escape it. So we do see everybody using something to try and get away from this overall pattern that we keep seeing throughout the film. Back at the Addams household, we have a young man called William arrive with a very 2000s hairstyle.
I knew you were going to say that.
It is.
It is.
Yeah. It's that kind of, you flick it back, sort of like you just stepped out of a salon sort of hairstyle. But he's quite nerdy. I couldn't work out what he was initially, but it turns out he's another patient of Dr. Adams.
I don't understand why he exists. Why wasn't it Rose that went with her to the asylum?
You'd probably have to pay Chloe Annett more.
True. But I don't get this character.
No.
I guess maybe once the twist is revealed.
Yes.
Maybe. No, it could have been Rose.
Yeah, definitely. He's immediately grabbed by Jenny and pulled into an alcove. And I thought, oh, right, so they're having an affair. But no, it's a bit more innocent than that. And she asks him what he's doing tomorrow, and he's working on a model of something. Sounds like an Airfix model, which also makes me think that these people are younger than what they've been cast as.
Yeah, I think at this point I couldn't really put my finger on why I wasn't finding it scary. It's not the lack of gore. It wasn't that.
Yeah.
I didn't actively dislike this film, but I don't know, it just felt more of a weak exploration of mental health issues rather than a horror film at this point, I think.
Yeah, it's a strange one. It doesn't feel like we're going to go into like monsters or a serial killer or anything like that. No. It definitely feels like it's more psychological than anything else.
But it doesn't feel like it's particularly good psychological.
No, I think the final third does redeem it somewhat, but the build-up to this has been poorly done and kind of a bit... There's a lot you could trim. Like you say, William could be taken out and replaced. Jenny tells Will to come back and fetch her at 4 a.m. because they're going back to the asylum to find out really what happened all those years ago. I don't know why they're going at 4 a.m. It just feels really odd.
Again, it feels like they're younger than they are vibe, like hiding away from daddy. And it doesn't quite hit.
Yeah, definitely. While they're talking, Dr. Adams arrives to take William away. We then immediately cut to 4 a.m. where Jenny gets up to climb out of the window to get picked up. Rose wakes up and sees this, but just lets Jenny go. Also, we see Dr. Adams has been woken up by this as well. We're then taken to a squalid flat where we meet Neville, also known as Robin Asquith from Confessions of a Window Cleaner / teacher / driving instructor / titties wahey.
Yeah, I didn't realise he'd done other stuff other than that. I thought he was like not one-hit wonder, but those films wonder and never did anything subsequently.
He turns up in a lot of like low budget stuff. He's, you get the feeling he does a lot of cons and a lot of like signings and he does a lot of low budget sort of horror and drama and stuff like that.
Have you ever watched any of those films?
I've seen one. I think it's The Driving Instructor.
That's the one I've seen. I remember a scene where a door closes on a lady's frock and the car drives off. And it pulls a frock off. Yeah. And I'm like, but ladies wear knickers and bras. And this lady wasn't wearing knickers and bras. She was literally wearing a dress and shoes. And when the dress got caught in the car door, she was just wearing shoes. And it's like, good. Yeah. This is what the 70s was.
It was a different time. It's weird because it was like Benny Hill but with shagging.
Yeah, Benny Hill, but with actual tits rather than suggested tits.
And no sped up footage.
No.
Right, so yes, we meet Robin Asquith, also known as Neville. He also has his partner with him. They're lying about on the floor, and they've just run out of drugs, which is a bugger when it happens.
I have no comparative for this, I'm afraid.
It's like when you run out of tea.
Oh, what? That's terrible. You have to go to the shop to get more tea.
Well, this is the thing. Neville inspects his syringe, which he says is empty, but then he sees the flashing light pattern that Isabella saw earlier in the reflection of his syringe. He bolts upright and runs out of the room. Only thing he says to his partner is, I've got to go. So everybody seems to be called by these flashing lights, but we don't know what for or where they're being called to yet. Slight spoiler, it's the asylum. So far, Marcus, when you've been watching this, did this make much sense to you? Because it made more sense to me the second time through.
Yeah. I think at one point I must have switched off.
Yeah.
This film clearly did need much concentration, so I didn't give it much.
Yeah.
But again, we've been really critical. I didn't hate it. I have to emphasise that again. It was just kind of okay.
Yeah, I didn't hate it, but there's a lot I like to point at in this and go, because it's. I think it's because I can see the potential in what it could have been.
Yes, I think after a few redrafts, this could have actually been really good.
Yeah, I get the feeling they didn't have that much time. But yes, everybody seems to be converging towards the asylum. Jenny and William make it to the asylum and it's all chained up. William climbs over and jumps down. Jenny goes to follow, but when she's about to jump, she flashes back to the dream of jumping from the clock tower.
Which actually seems quite good.
Yeah.
That's the kind of trauma that makes sense. Yeah.
However, she does manage to overcome this and she does jump to get into the abandoned asylum. Then randomly we're taken to what appears to be a church where there's a hooded monk in sandals. He's praying at a font, and then when he looks in the font, he sees the pattern of lights that everyone's been seeing before, and he yells in anguish and runs away.
Do we still have monks? Are monks still a thing?
Monks are still a thing, yeah.
Oh, are they?
Yeah. I also was a bit baffled because he's dressed like sort of ye olde monk.
That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah. I can imagine they're not wearing like the brown robes with the Brother Cadfael hairdo.
Yeah, spud bag and a rope.
Yeah, there's a lot of this with when we meet people like Isabella's like a very stereotypical fortune teller with the head towel and all that kind of thing, and then we meet what this turns out to be Father Matthew, and he's dressed like Cadfael. It's broad strokes, so we know what's going on. So having jumped the fence to the asylum, they find it's completely unlocked. And then the beginning of what I've been calling how long ago was it that they lived there starts. Because they find a load of paintings that Jenny and Rose did when they were children that are still in the asylum all these years, just on the side, and don't appear to have aged whatsoever.
Yeah, that's just bad prop design though, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think the idea was good. The execution,
Yeah. It does make me feel that the crucial fall down to this is Chloe Annett and Stephanie Pitt are meant to be younger.
Yeah.
And
you're probably right.
It wasn't that long ago that this was going on. I think if you did this now, you'd probably have teenage leads. We get more backstory on what happened when Jenny and Rose and the family lived at the asylum. They used to do paintings for the patients, but they used to call them the guests.
That's kind of nice.
That's nice, yeah. Which you would do if you were like a child living in the asylum. You wouldn't call them patients because they'd be your friends, wouldn't they? Yeah.
I would have expected that not many asylums, particularly, let's say it was 10 years ago and this is set in the year 2000. In 1990, you wouldn't have kids living in an asylum, surely.
No. Well, sort of live on, especially as like live on site staff.
And you certainly wouldn't have access to the patients if you...
No, you'd assume not. Yeah. But they used to put on tea parties, and they used to have dancers in the ballroom. Although on closer inspection, she realises all the paintings represent the dreams we've seen so far. There's one of her mother being stabbed. There's one of somebody jumping from the clock tower. So this is something that's been going on for a very, very long time.
And again, if you lived in an asylum and you were a child, drawing pictures of your mum getting stabbed, surely somebody would go, oh, that's a bit of an issue. Yeah. That's a bit of a red flag. And they wouldn't still be there.
Well, maybe it's like the thing with earlier was like, well, at least you're in the right place. They hear a cough and head off to investigate. I've put a note here. During the whole scene of them walking around and investigating the asylum, William finds a telephone switchboard and starts pretending to be a World War fighter pilot, which is a bit odd.
Again, I think you're right. The more I think about it, I thought it was supposed to be like depicting that they were a bit mad. Yeah. But I think it's miscasting and they're supposed to be young.
Yeah. This, I thought, did tie in a little bit nicely with earlier on when Jenny asks him what he's doing. He says he's making a Airfix model, which I'm guessing is like a aeroplane. The weirder bit is when he comes across the bars on the windows and he immediately starts hanging off them doing an impression of a monkey. I get the feeling that was the actor going, can I do this? You know, can I ad-lib? And he's going, sure. And then he does an impression of a monkey.
Why do they keep it in? If that was the case, though.
Maybe it's the only good take they got. While examining the dark corridors, Jenny happens across the spooky corridor from the beginning of the film. She tries to walk down it, but starts to flash back and flees in terror.
Okay, that's okay. That's kind of well done.
She leaves William behind and loses him immediately in the Maze-like Asylum. This happens a lot in the film. Somebody runs out of the room and immediately they're lost to the corridors. Like, when there's actually no physical way that they could be out of sight before the second person gets to them. She runs into a different corridor and heads up some stairs, and then we get the first half jump scare of the film where we meet Arthur, who just appears at the top of the stairs, blatantly standing there with a torch under his chin to look more spooky.
Yeah. I assumed that was just because the character's a bit of a nasty piece of work, deliberately trying to be scary, but also, why?
Well, I suppose we're probably about 15, 20 minutes in at this point, and there's not really been anything particularly horror-y in it. Yeah, so probably having that in. Although it's revealed immediately as William catches up to find Jenny laughing and joking because Arthur's the janitor who's been here on his own the whole time since the asylum closed down, cleaning the place. And if you look at the asylum, he's done a crap job.
Yeah, he has. And also, if it's an abandoned building, why are they paying for a janitor? That was, again,
yeah.
You either abandon a building or you don't.
Yeah.
You don't pay a guy to security guard a place that doesn't need security guarding.
Yeah, his justification was he'd never get another job at his age, which is a very down way to look on things.
Well, yeah, but they'd fire him regardless.
You'd think, but also that he says that he makes tuppence halfpenny, which made me smile at the use of the phrase tuppence halfpenny. I mean, it becomes apparent throughout the film that while it is closed, you get the feeling that the father still owns the place. Maybe. Although that does go ahead when we meet Colin Baker later on. Yeah, it's a strange one, but he's there looking after the building, which I know is a thing, because you can actually apply to do that job.
Sounds just soul-destroying, though.
Yeah, I think it's called like a property guardian. You can apply to live in the building, basically to just make sure everything's shipshape and nobody breaks in and all that kind of stuff. They tend to do it in like groups, so it's not just like one person versus, pesky kids, which is something that Arthur says a lot during this. He's very much an old man shakes fist at cloud. You bloody kids.
He's quite a tragic character, really, that, he was, in inverted commas, happy working at an asylum. And he ended up just being on his own, which is its own kind of form of torture, really.
Yeah. You get the feeling he doesn't go home. You really do get the feeling he lives there as well, in his boiler room, which has got lots of tea and a nice kettle that whistles when he puts it on the stove. And he's got a boiler, which is, make it a bit nicer, stick a comfy chair in. That sounds like your idea of heaven. A lovely warm room with a big box of tea bags and a kettle. Throw in a cat.
Yeah, and that's so odd that I thought that he might be something to do with the killings.
Yeah, there is that feeling of like, is it him? Because, he's the janitor that's still there. Why is he still there? Presumably decades later. Has he been drawn there on that day and he just happens to be the one who got there first? That kind of thing. And, before he starts killing, he stokes up the boiler and makes a cup of tea.
Fair.
You've got to have morals in this.
Yeah, you've got to have tea.
Exactly. So Jenny shows Arthur the painting she did of her mother being stabbed. Arthur's confused because he found her mother and was with her the entire time until she was taken away. So there's no possible way Jenny should have seen it, which is confusing. But this all ties into an overarching theme of shared memories, which comes in a lot during this. Arthur thought that Dr. Adams seemed to be hiding something and that he gave up trying to find the killer a bit too easily, which is tying into this whole thing of now, is it Dr. Adams? Is Dr. Adams behind it all?
Yeah. it goes back to this being more of a murder mystery than a horror film. In fact, I would call this a murder mystery, actually. Yeah. That's certainly not what I went in expecting.
Yeah, maybe this is why it didn't do as well as it would, is people going to it thinking it's a horror. No, that's not horror. And if we'd gone, this is a murder mystery with horror elements, maybe it would have done better. So Arthur reveals this before he grumpily storms off to lock the front doors and to stoke the boiler, moaning about bloody kids the whole time. So yeah, he locks them in and then he leaves.
It's very Scooby-Doo, isn't it?
Yes, it is. He even looks like, I mean, to see him, he's got the grey hair with a salt and pepper moustache, and he's in the janitor's one-piece. He is very Scooby-Doo.
And maybe that's why I suspected him, because it's very Scooby-Doo, and it's always this guy that is the baddie in Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, it's old man Arthur, who's the janitor of the abandoned asylum.
And then they pull a mask off or whatever.
Yeah. Williams is consoling Jenny, and they decide that they're going to go away and come back again a later time. However, Arthur has locked them in, presumably only about 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, and that seems a little extreme. And that does seem a little bit extreme. Why did he lock them in? It's an abandoned building.
Yeah, I suppose routine, maybe. But why did he lock it while knowing that somebody's there? And it wasn't just like, yeah, he did the big massive key of, like, you can't get out this way. William goes to find Arthur. Meanwhile, Arthur's making a cup of tea and shoveling coal into the boiler. As his kettle begins to whistle, he turns round to find a torch shined in his eyes and is stabbed. And we have our first new victim of the film. Sadly, Arthur has to go.
So yeah, I was wrong about it being Arthur, wasn't I?
I mean, this seems to be a thing throughout the film, is just when you think, oh, it's them, they get killed.
And I kind of like that, actually.
Yeah.
That's kind of nicely done.
I noticed on the second watch through, there's a lot of things that happen, or little things that happen that make you realise, oh, they're not the killer. And I'll go through those when we come through. Right, William arrives a few moments after Arthur getting killed. He can't find Arthur. He walks towards where Arthur might be, however, he burns himself on the boiler and gives up and turns away. And then takes the kettle off the boil and steals his biscuits.
Bit comedy of errors, that.
But you never steal a dead man's biscuits.
He didn't know he was dead, though.
You still never steal a man's biscuits, Mark.
True.
He then runs back upstairs, casually jumps on a bed, and starts eating the biscuits. Completely unfazed. Jenny's musing that maybe she did kill her mother, and because they can't get out and they can't find Arthur, they decide to bed down for the night. And then a plotline starts which never gets resolved, which is Jenny asks William why he needs to see a psychiatrist.
Yeah. Why, if they weren't going to resolve it, why did they bother with it?
Yeah, maybe to sort of build up the wanting to care about them as a couple. But they very, like, there's barely any affection. You get a little bit from William that he likes her more than she likes him. Maybe it's to build it up for, spoiler, William gets killed in this film.
Oh, no.
Yeah. William says he can't bring himself to tell her right now, but he will when he knows her better. So hopefully, long-term relationship going to happen here between William and Steffi, and everything's going to be just fine.
Yeah, good luck.
Jenny falls asleep and has a nightmare when she is in Asylum scrubs, and a group of patients come in, and I've put here and just have a good old feel of her.
Yeah, that was...
yeah.
I mean, it was true. Yeah, it's probably something that is realistic, unpleasantly. But yeah, it came out of nowhere, and you're never quite sure what's true and what's not in this. Yeah. But
Jenny screams for help, only to be answered by her mother, who seems to be alongside her, having a very similar thing going on. However, her mother tells her to just enjoy it.
Which is fucking horrendous.
Yeah. The mum is not coming out of this looking well.
I'm not saying she deserved to get killed, but...
No, but she's... This all builds to... When I watched this through the second time, I did put a theory together of what I think happened, including the mum.
Okay.
I'll go through that then and we'll see if that makes sense to you.
Very little of this made sense to me.
William gets woken up by her screaming, as Rose did earlier. But when he tries to help, she screams for him to get away, throwing the bed towards him.
Again, not particularly poorly done. When you wake up from a very particularly vivid dream, you know, I know people who have, it's been so vivid that they've shouted at their partner for something that they haven't fucking done.
Yeah.
You know?
I like the shot as well of she leaps off the bed, the mattress goes flying, and then the shot is done so the chicken wire sort of bed frame is in front of her like a cage. That was quite nice. William leaves because he doesn't really know what to do, but he just wants to make sure he's away from her because she asked. You know, William's actually, for all his biscuit stealing faults, a devoted character. You know, he's quite nice, but in the way that he's gonna die, you know. Yeah,
it's the naive, devoted, unrequited lover.
Yeah, he's Chucky from Pretty in Pink.
I've not seen Pretty in Pink. I was thinking you were talking about Chucky from Child's Play. I was like, no, he's not.
Oh, that'd be hilarious. Imagine having Chucky as the unrequited love of the lead actress.
It would make this film so much better.
And then revealed that he was the killer all along. Oh, dear. Yeah. Sorry, should have done this with just Chloe Annett as the lead and everyone else is puppets.
I'd watch the fuck out of that.
Yeah. What was the one I saw? I saw a thing recently, I think it was on Twitter. Ryan Johnson had said he was wanting to make a third Knives Out.
I saw the same post.
Somebody requoted it of just have Daniel Craig as the only human and everyone else is the Muppets. It'd work. Daniel Craig could do a Michael Caine on that and just play it completely straight. Just like...
True.
Yep.
True.
And it would work. So we then cut to what appears to be some time later. William is shivering in the corridors, and he decides to go back to the boiler room to warm up, and maybe, you know, see if there's any more biscuits.
To Nick.
Yeah, exactly. What a bastard. I bet they're even like ginger nuts or something, not even worth nicking. However, this time, he actually sees Arthur's body hiding behind a cabinet, or dragged behind a cabinet. The body's not... He didn't get killed and then just go, better hide behind this cabinet. And he spins round to get a torch in his eye and then gets confronted by the killer. However, William does manage to run away and he shuts himself in a nearby lab. However, in a nice touch, he's holding the door shut so the killer can't get in, and then the killer chains him in so he can't get out, which isn't something you see in horror films much. I quite liked that.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It's almost intelligent.
And then another good bit is the killer goes to the other entrance to the room, puts their knife through the crack in the door, and starts sliding the bolt across gently with the knife, which I thought was pretty cool in terms of a
pretty
kind of...
creepy as well.
Yeah, it built tension really well. I wanted to actually go try this on a bolt, but then I realised I'd have to do this to my neighbour's gate. And if they came out of their flat to see me with a knife through the gate, just gradually doing that, I probably wouldn't be able to live here anymore.
Prob's best that you don't give that a go, to be honest with you. And do you have an appropriately stabby, horror filmy knife?
Yes.
Why?
I have some lovely knives. They're really good at chopping stuff.
Okay.
It's a really nice vegetable knife. I've got a set of them. Anyway, where are we? So the killer eventually does manage to get themselves in using the knifey, slidey, slidey method.
Patent pending.
That's a t-shirt when we start doing merch. Arthur runs into another part of the lab, which is full of x-rays for some reason. I thought that this was going to reveal something major about what's been going on, but it's just a room full of cobwebs and x-rays.
Don't x-rays kind of deteriorate quite quickly?
So again, it's just sort of like, right, what should we do to dress this set? I know, x-rays. Because you can go and buy them from a hospital. However, it is a dead end, literally, as the killer drags their knife through an x-ray and then bears down on William. Now, we don't see what happens to William, but with the pattern we've got going on, it's probably a safe bet he's dead. As this happens, Jenny reawakens. Sensing something is wrong, she runs off shouting for William and that she's sorry, which now I realise makes a bit more sense in that Jenny is one of these people who is sharing a load of memories with other people. So she may have visioned William getting killed and thought she'd done it.
Oh, okay. That wasn't made explicit at all.
No. I think when you get to the end, there is a kind of, and then you kind of, it's a bit Usual Suspects-y in that you kind of go back and go, well, that bit's where she's having a shared memory. Oh, that makes more sense because it's a shared memory. Maybe I shouldn't have had a Red Bull and then watched this the second time round. Now we're coming back to a scene which I think is probably one of your favourite scenes. It is one of my favourite scenes. It's then now the next day. It goes from day to night really quickly in this film.
Yeah.
We come back and we are introduced to Arbuthnot.
Yes. Arbuthnot.
Yes. Apparently his full name is Percival Arbuthnot.
Good.
Yeah. Played by Colin Baker, doing his best Fred the Butcher from Coronation Street.
Oh, it's so bad.
It's a choice, isn't it?
He is not good at the Yorkshire accent.
Yeah. I get the feeling that he was about to work on something else where he was doing a Yorkshire accent, so he asked the director if he can do it in this as a test.
Yeah, that test did not work.
Yeah.
He's quite good at portraying bastard with his face, but not good at portraying Yorkshireman.
Yeah, it's strange. He has as an assistant, Snape, who is a very sort of short, weaselly, kind of train spottery looking type, played by Paul Reynolds from Press Gang.
Yes.
And Let Him Have It, the Derek Bentley film.
Yeah, that's the one about the last person who got hanged, isn't it?
It is. It's him and Christopher Eccleston. It's really good.
Grim.
Yeah, it's grim, but the performances are great. Paul Reynolds has shown up in quite a bit of stuff, and he normally plays like smug middle management kind of wanker. But he has shown up in a couple of things where he's not played that, and he is good. He's still working to this day. He was in I'm sure he was in a sitcom recently on like Channel 4. Again, playing a sort of smug middle management wanker. But yeah,
he's never quite made it, but he's also made enough money that it doesn't matter, I'm guessing. He's one of those actors.
Yeah, I get the feeling he's one of those guys who he's always got something to do and he's comfortable. But a lot of people will remember him from Press Gang as the sort of Thatcherite marketing manager.
But I ate these scenes up. The whole Colin Baker 6 minutes was probably my favourite part of the film.
Yeah.
I think I wanted some silly, I wanted some horror, and, his death is horror.
Yeah.
And, I loved it.
Yeah, it's a proper tonal shift. Even though the accent's terrible, it's actually a proper jump up in pace, because from here on out, everything kind of really speeds up.
And it's a classic horror thing of introduce bastard does bastardery, bastard gets killed.
Yeah.
Great. Get small character, but as horror tropes go, it was done with a lot of fun, and the death was cool, and it was the fucking Doctor.
It's the kind of role that now, if it was good, would get nominated for like Best Guest Star.
Interesting, because that probably wouldn't have existed in 2000.
Yeah. But yeah, so Arbuthnot and Snape are being shown around the asylum by the estate agent Sandra, who's played by Penn Linfield, who I know.
I'm sorry, what?
I do know her. I haven't seen her in a good few years, but she was based out of Nottingham for a while. She's still acting. I think her son acts as well now, and she's an absolutely lovely person. And when I popped up in this, I was like, I know you. And then I looked at the thing, I was like, bloody hell. Because I think she was based out of London initially, and then she moved to Notts. But she's really, really lovely, and she is a good actress. So it was really nice to see her in this. It was kind of like, oh, cool. And she plays off Colin Baker really well.
I think so.
Yeah. Paul Reynolds, not a lot to do in this film, it has to be said.
No.
I don't think he reaches the 20-word mark.
But, I mean, there's not a lot for basically anyone that isn't Ingrid Pitt's daughter, to be honest with you.
So Arbuthnot is looking to buy the asylum, and in a very flirty way between him and Sandra, he basically offers to bribe her to let him know what the maximum bid is going to be on the asylum so he can match it. Because it's going to be like a mystery auction thing. So he's trying to get insider information so he could buy it. He wants to give her 5%. She wants 25%, which Arbuthnot does give her. Then there's a very strange scene. They're in an empty room when they're talking about this and there's nobody there. And then they walk off to discuss the bribe in another room, which turns out to be a bathroom. And Sandra is counting money while Arbuthnot is peeing.
Yeah.
It's a power move. I don't know if we're meant to believe something's just happened beforehand, but I don't think so because Snape is still trying to get up a flight of stairs that he was about 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's his cardio problem, do you think? 'Cause it's not that big a staircase, as we see in a moment, but he really is struggling getting around the asylum and has to stop.
You're asking me questions I don't have answers for, Carl.
It's weird.
I was focusing on Colin Baker's moustache at this point.
True. He also delivers a great line like, "There's nothing like a good vestibule."
And your accent was better than Colin Baker's.
It was. Which is quite funny because he hands Snape a tape recorder, like a dictaphone, and literally he just starts like hip-hop hype manning him behind with sort of saying the things. "Nothing like a good vestibule," click, vestibule. So yeah, it's quite fun. Although he mocks Snape for not being able to get up the stairs, and Snape mentions to his dictaphone, "Must shop Arbuthnot to the police anonymously." So there's I'd like to think there's a whole other film somewhere about Arbuthnot and Snape and all the dodgy dealings that go on.
I'm calling 6-part spin-off series.
Yep. Disney Plus series, yep. However, as Snape is talking about this, he looks up to see somebody standing over him, and then we cut to the scene of Arbuthnot and Sandra where she's counting money and he's peeing, and we hear a scream. And this I thought was probably the most horror-y bit. Arbuthnot starts coming down the stairs, delivering the perfect line of "Snape, prepare to meet your maker," and then slips and falls down the stairs because they're covered in blood.
Yeah.
And the reveal of Colin Baker putting his hand up onto his head like, "Oh, I've banged my head," and then he realises he's got blood all over his hands.
I do wonder whether they cast the Doctor to be able to have the Doctor involved in something with blood.
Yes.
Because for me, that did feel like quite a shocking image in a weird way.
Mm. Yeah, he seems to be the one who's gone out and done the least doctory things, if you know what I mean. Like Peter Davison, I believe it was after Doctor Who, did All Creatures Great and Small, which was a very similar, like, benevolent Doctor character.
It was before.
Was it before? But he's always played he did like The Last Detective, very nice kind of characters.
He did Ain't Misbehaving, where he played an adulterous husband.
True, but he was a heartwarming adulterous husband.
True.
Sylvester McCoy just went bonkers and did all sorts.
Played a wizard.
He also played like a butler on Sky One's early morning Saturday morning thing.
He did Evil Murderer, though.
Did he?
He did, like, Real Life Murderer, that thing that opened Channel 5.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Yeah, it was called Beyond Fear, and he played Michael Samms.
He seems to have gone the more... I mean, it shows because he's done a lot of American films in the last few years. I mean, he did obviously The Hobbit. He's in The Munsters. Rob Zombie's The Munsters.
Which I haven't seen, but I'd like to.
Yes. I've heard it's not too bad, but if you don't like Rob Zombie's stuff, you're going to hate it, I think is the thing. Because he's proper done like a 50s homage sort of thing to it, but there's a lot of blue screen apparently. And of course, he was in Thunderbirds Argo.
Good.
Yep.
But I think what's kind of sad is that because they cast the Doctor, because he was quite a fundamentally unlikable but kind of campy role and there was blood, I feel like these are the most memorable scenes of the entire film.
Yeah. And you get the feeling Colin Baker knows that as well. You know, the accent's big, you know, the flirtatious nature. They're the main characters that aren't... It's almost like they're in a separate film from everybody else.
Yeah.
Because while they're walking, it makes me wonder if it was shot afterwards, but that wouldn't tie in with the ending. But it's weird because they're walking around and it's like during the day, there's jokes, there's flirting, there's money, there's this, that, and the other, while presumably at the same time, Jenny and William are running around in the catacombs downstairs with the murderer. Yeah.
It almost feels like it should have been a flashback rather than concurrent.
Yeah, it's shot differently as well, which I think is interesting. But, yes, so he's just fallen down, landed in a massive pool of blood. Snape's body's gone, but there's enough blood there to go, well, he's not survived that.
He's certainly not having a good day if he has.
No. Before Colin Baker, I'm going to call him Colin Baker because it's easier than saying Arbuthnot. Before Colin Baker can work out what's going on, it starts raining £20 notes. Part of me was like, is this a dream sequence? Or is this, what's going on? And then he starts greedily grabbing the £20 notes out of the blood and starts trying to get his way back upstairs while grabbing the money on the way, only to find, although you only see her hand, Sandra's been killed as well. Yeah,
it's a little bit of a capitalism is bad, greed is bad kind of thing, isn't it?
Well, this is punctuated by Arbuthnot is terrified and wants to run away, but this isn't going to stop him from taking his money back out of Sandra's dead cold hand.
Shocking. After he'd flirted with her as well.
Yeah, he peed in front of her. But he does say, waste not, want not, love, and then, runs away. It's not too long, though, because he can't get out of the asylum because it's all been locked up. And soon enough, he is found by the killer, who taunts him with the keys initially, and then just stabs him.
Yeah. Good stabbing.
Yeah, he's the only one we see die because he has a final line, which is, Mother, I'm sorry. Which makes no sense.
No. There's no context to why he's sorry to his mum.
Yeah.
In a kind of subjective way, I would have thought that his, in inverted commas, success by society standards, his mum would have probably been quite proud.
Yeah. So we'll find out what that's all about in the 6-part spin-off series, Arbuthnot and Snape.
I'd enjoy that.
Corrupt landowners.
Let's get it on.
Yeah.
Let's get it on. Chloe Annett needs to be in it, though.
Oh, absolutely.
Remember we started watching this film for Chloe Annett? She's not been in it much, has she?
No, not even flashbacks.
No.
So, now Colin Baker's dead and out of the way. Now he's done his day's worth of filming. Jenny is still looking for William, but she hears a voice doing the, is there anybody there? To which Jenny starts answering, I think this was supposed to be comedy, but the acting kind of let it down. There was the line of, are you Cleopatra, Queen of the Nile? No, I'm Jenny. Which was probably the only funny bit in this.
Apart from Colin Baker's accent.
Yeah, well, there's the only non-Colin Baker funny bit. So we find Isabella, the medium from earlier, is holding a séance, surrounded by candles, and this is the excuse for Ingrid Pitt to act against her daughter for a scene.
Mm-hmm.
We find out Isabella used to be a patient at the asylum. I mean, you could almost put this to today's politics. However, when they wanted to sell the hospital, she was miraculously fine and released back into the general public.
Yeah, that's actually quite relevant.
Yeah. When she was on the outside, she used being able to hear her voices into becoming a medium, which isn't really using your voices. It's just, I hear voices.
Yep.
Yes. She breaks down and reveals that she felt like she had to come there today. Jenny consoles her, but once they touch, they both see the same wibbly-wobbly patterns that we've been seeing that's been calling out to everyone. Isabella storms off yelling that she murdered Jenny's mother, but Jenny is adamant that she murdered her mother.
You'd think it'd be the other way around, really. If you'd had that experience, you'd be like, fuck, I didn't do it, thank fuck.
Yeah, but it's a very strange one of just like, I killed her. No, you didn't. I killed her. And then Isabella runs away, Jenny giving chase, and this leads to another, you've just run out of shot, however you've managed to completely disappear. Jenny does look for it. She nearly happens across Arbuthnot's body, and she recoils in horror, but it's because there's a rat. So she doesn't go into the bit where the body is.
circumstances, etc. But I guess it works.
Yeah. Also, we see that the killer is nearby, which means Jenny isn't the killer.
It doesn't exonerate her from being her mum's killer.
No.
But it exonerates her from being the killer that's taken out the janitor and Arbuthnot.
Yes, definitely. So, on checking the phone switchboard, which has a light clicking on it, Jenny believes she finds William in the chapel. She walks in and immediately sits in the confession booth, which is telling.
Okay, so a couple of things on this.
Yeah.
That's a massive fucking church for one little asylum.
Yeah.
Like a massive church.
Yeah. It's blatantly a separate location.
Yeah. Did they really need that many pews when they've... I really don't feel like it was that big a building.
Yeah. I mean, it was 440 patients, but I get the feeling that they wouldn't all want to go to church on Sunday, unless they were forced to go to church on Sunday.
In the year... in 1990?
2000.
Well, yeah, but if we're saying it's 10 years after, that's why they've returned.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, that's a weird one.
And the other one, don't vicars get really fucking bored sat in that booth waiting until someone turns up, particularly if it's in an asylum where nobody's there?
I got a Nintendo Switch. Just a Game Boy.
If I was a vicar and I had to sit in a booth, I'd totally want a Nintendo Switch.
Yeah. If we're going to the time, it's probably a Game Boy. So you say, "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned," and you say, "Dun dun 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 dun." Yeah, Tetris is addictive.
I love Tetris.
We all do. It's bloody addictive. Sitting in the confession booth, she's very surprised to find that somebody else is in the confession booth. This is Father Matthew, who is the monk that we saw earlier. When Jenny just starts talking to him like, "This is fine." Maybe she thinks she's dreaming, but she says she believes that she's killed her mother. Father Matthew says he's seen this himself. He said he saw him, her, and the others, which makes Jenny believe they have the same nightmares. However, Father Matthew reveals his face is heavily disfigured. It's a good makeup job, it has to be said. Yeah,
and what I like about it is that rather than him being evil because he's ugly, they actually gently explore and acknowledge the cliche of the deformed face and the deformed mind. I think that's actually something that should be championed about this film, is that was really interesting and something that isn't done very often and is often treated quite simplistically in horror, whereas I feel like this sticks out in a film that has bad plot and bad writing.
Yeah.
That was actually really interesting that they explored that.
Yes, definitely. And then he reveals he was the chaplain of the asylum. However, he eventually tried to kill himself and ended up becoming a patient. And then this is where we find out that he is the one that jumped from the tower that Jenny's been seeing in all of her nightmares. Father Matthew says that he has memories of things that never happened. Also, he says things he doesn't understand, and he's just generally confused that there's a lot of other things going on that he has no control over. And this makes him very angry, and he throws Jenny out of the chapel, which...
That bit makes no sense.
Yeah.
You'd think he'd jump on the opportunity, but the rest of it is very good in this scene. The acting is good. The exploration of the deformed face, deformed mind thing is good. I mean, it's a beautiful church as well, settings-wise.
Yeah. This is the bit for me when we realise I first get a glimmer of what's going on. And it's like, oh, you're all sharing the same memories for some reason. And we finally nailed down what one of the dreams is and who it is. So that's for me where it kind of twigged that all these people are sharing one memory bank almost. But you can't. But they don't know who's done what and who is them and who's not. And
I think because he knows it was him because of his injuries.
Yeah.
Rather than all of them thinking it was them that went off there.
He has something physical that says, no, this was definitely you. Jenny is trying to find food, and we have this weird little bit which I think makes me believe is trying to show that she's not the killer in the asylum, is she tries to open a can of what looks like peaches with a screwdriver and balls it up instantly and stabs herself in the hand.
Yeah.
So she's crap at stabbing.
Yeah, and again, this is where it falls apart. Why were they locked in, and why doesn't she just bob up the local shop?
Yeah. There must be some door somewhere in this building that she can get out of. But obviously it's so labyrinthine, maze-like, that she can't find one. While she's doing this, she runs into Neville, who has made his way to the asylum. This is another bit that I saw in the one review I could find, that this scene gets mocked for the performance. But same as you said about the more delicate looking into this, it's revealed that Neville uses the drugs as an excuse, which is he uses them because people think he's crazy otherwise, but because he does drugs, people think, oh, he's just on drugs, which is an interesting way of looking at it, I thought.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting exploration, but I can see why it gets mocked because it is kind of simplistic too.
Yeah, Robin Asquith is doing the scratch yourself kind of portrayal of a junkie. The sort of, if you're a WCW fan, Billy Kidman when he joined the Flock.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a deep cut.
It is a deep cut.
I don't feel like he does a terrible job.
No.
But I don't feel like he does a good job. Yeah. And maybe you should stick to naked ladies and going, ooh.
Yeah, so he's on the lookout for drugs because he needs something to take the visions away. He just finds a random jar of green liquid, which looks like the thing they keep the combs in at the barbershop. And when she says, what's that? He says, nitrous something, and tries to inject it. He asks her if she wants some, and she responds that she's terrified of needles, which causes a flashback of Dr. Adams flicking a needle and saying he's so sorry. So it looks like she's terrified of needles because she was experimented on.
Yeah, and I think that's... Once you've got the idea of a hive mind, everyone's got the same memories, that's your natural assumption, isn't it, that they've all been experimented on?
Yeah.
It's almost a cliche, really.
Yeah. Jenny stops Neville as she realises that they're all connected mentally, and then she grabs him and drags him down the spooky corridor, saying she never had the guts to do it before, but for some reason now that she's got Neville with her, she wants to do it. And they burst around the spooky corridor to find a very sterile white room with a dentist chair in it.
Yeah. Why a dentist chair?
It's probably the only thing they could find. She sits in the chair and immediately starts to remember everything. And this is where it all starts to fall together. And we get some interesting bits of plot, I think. She was being experimented on by her father, including being injected with drugs, which prompts Neville to think that he maybe started earlier than he did. Now, I don't know about you, but I took this as Neville never actually started doing drugs, but because they had the interconnected memories, he remembers Jenny being put on drugs, and that's what triggered him off.
Interesting. I just didn't go that deep into the Neville character, I'll be honest with you, but that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that he became an addict by proxy, almost. So Jenny forgot that she'd been experimented on with drugs. Neville, however, took that memory and became a junkie.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Jenny walks into another bit of the room and switches on a switch on a big humming block of switches. And the pattern of lights that we've seen all the way through the film get broadcast in the lab on the wall in front of Neville. Which starts he starts reacting poorly to this. However, as Jenny turns round, she discovers the body of William. William's back, and he's dead.
Oh.
Yeah.
I mean, that was inevitable.
Yeah. It's a shame. Who's going to do an Airfix model now?
I know.
Jenny discovers William and then finds her father behind her with blood on his hands and a bloody knife. They scuffle, and she's knocked unconscious. So as far as we're aware now, Dr. Adams is the baddie. Shock horror.
And I would have believed that without the twist.
Yes.
To be honest with you, that makes sense.
Jenny wakes back up again, and she's injected with drugs again. her father starts the patterns of lights, and he says, and this is a weird line, that this is his last chance to help her with her nightmares. We flash back to her mother's death. However, this time we see different intonations of that line, "Hello, darling, what's the matter?" from the mother. One of them's like a sexy one of them's a concerned one of them's a nonplussed one.
So they're not quite the same memories, but they're close enough that it feels like a shared memory, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, there's a different context in each one, which is kind of good for the actress that she managed to do that, 'cause she did it pretty well. But it's revealed we see what she's looking at each time, and it's a different one each time that is the killer. So we see Jenny, Isabella, Matthew, Neville, and Dr. Adams all being revealed as the killer. But which one is it? Jenny seems to start to go a bit insane. She starts smiling and chuckling to herself. However, she's rescued by Neville, who puts a knife through the screen with the flashing patterns on it and saves her, unties her. And this is another thing that makes me think Neville never actually started on drugs, is Jenny's on drugs. However, Neville appears to be a bit battered, and even he turns to her and goes, "You're stoned," and she isn't.
It's a fun thing.
Yeah.
Though. It's clever, yeah.
Definitely. She runs away into the asylum, pursued by her father, who just knocks Neville to one side.
Yeah, Neville's having a bad day.
Yeah, I thought it was quite funny because he puts his arm out in front of him to stop him, and he pushes the arm, and he does the proper like, "Ow!" Jenny makes her way to the chapel, looking for Father Matthew for help, and Father Matthew's holding a mass with people in the church. However, we realise that all the parishioners are the corpses of everyone that's been killed throughout. Arbuthnot is in there, Snape's in there, Sandra's in there. Jenny doesn't realise this until she sits behind one of them and then nudges Arbuthnot, who just leans back, and it's revealed he's dead.
This seems odd. This is an abandoned building.
Yeah.
Surely you wouldn't question that there's anyone in the fucking place.
I think by this point, Jenny's also on drugs.
True.
And on this point, she's already run into Father Matthew and Neville and Isabella. So the fact that there's people turning up is probably not that big of a thing for her now. Although we've still lost Isabella. So Jenny realises they're dead. She runs up to Father Matthew for help. Father Matthew gives a big speech about how compassion is dead and he won't help her. He's proper chewing scenery, this actor. He's doing a proper like from hellfire and brimstone and all this kind of thing. He's going for it.
I actually feel bad for this character, and I think to some extent that's because the actor does a good job.
Yeah, his life had been ruined to the point where he says compassion is dead, and he's turned his back on the human race.
Yeah, he plays damaged very well.
Yes, he
actually
does. So Jenny runs away, only to be followed by Dr. Adams a few moments later. And then a telling bit for this is he sees all the bodies. You know, he pushes Paul Reynolds, who, if you look closely, is breathing with his slit throat. And he looks to Father Matthew and asks why he killed them all. However, Father Matthew said he just found them and he wanted a congregation. So
which is grim.
Yeah. So this has eliminated, if we're playing it like Cluedo, this has eliminated Father Matthew, who says he just found them. Well, so far he says he just found them. And Dr. Adams, who is shocked to see them all. So he didn't do it either.
It eliminates the church as the room as well.
Yes.
Doesn't eliminate the lead piping.
No, doesn't eliminate the lead piping. Or the candlestick. Jenny has made her way to the clock tower and we're heading for the big finale, pursued by her father. She gets onto the tower edge and again we flash back to the jumping nightmare. Jenny, however, can't bring herself to jump. However, she flashes back to what turns out to be Father Matthew's jumping nightmare.
Yes.
And it distracts her long enough that she actually slips and falls, but Dr. Adams saves her and pulls her back into safety. And then we are joined by Neville and Isabella and Father Matthew. So everybody is on this clock tower. And they realise one of them must be the killer. And this is where Dr. Adams reveals the whole plot. Now, just before this bit happens, Mark, what were you thinking at this point?
I thought it was the vicar.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I know we came here for Chloe Annett, but she'd been in it so little that I'd forgotten. Yeah. And I'd assumed that it was just that opening scene.
Yeah, definitely. So let's break this down. So what happened is, many years ago, Dr. Adams was trying to break through in terms of understanding mental health. And the best way he thought to do this was basically enforced telekinesis.
Yeah, and torturing his own children.
Yes. So we see him doing what was done in a much more comedic way, the I'm holding a card, what's on your card thing from Ghostbusters. And he's doing it with Isabella, who turns out was a doctor in the asylum, and Father Matthew, who is the chaplain. When this doesn't work out, we show it fails many, many times, he decides to try it with a patient, which turns out to be Neville. And then he also tried it with his own daughter, Jenny. So he's been trying to do this weird mind meld to try and understand mental health and psychosis more by this bizarre series of drugs and...
It's grossly unethical.
Yes, massively. So, apart from Father Matthew jumping off the clock tower, they essentially all have this cloud of memories and experiences that none of them are truly sure which one of them did anything apart from jumping off the clock tower. So then they're trying to all work out who the killer is, and Dr. Adams reveals, dun dun dun, it might not be any of them. And when they ask why that's the case, he says there was one other one. And just as he says this, he appears to get stabbed in the back. And I throw myself a pound because it's Rose. Chloe Annett, who isn't dressed like she's been on a killing spree.
No, there's no blood on her.
Yeah, there's no blood on her. She's not like wearing gloves or a coat or anything like that. She's in a lovely blouse and trousers.
Maybe she got changed.
Yeah. But yes, Chloe Annett is, for all intents and purposes, the killer of everyone who's been in the asylum. Now, the thing I found weird is she stabs Dr. Adams in the back, and then she stabs him in the chest. But I don't think she's actually got a knife on her.
Eh?
I don't think they had a knife on the day. Because when you see it, you don't see the knife in the back. It just looks like she's hit him in the back.
Oh, I didn't notice that. But it does say a lot about this film, if that's the case.
And when she does the sort of stab in the chest, you can't see anything in her hand because it's covered by Patrick Mower's arm, and it's kind of awkward. So I don't actually think they had a knife on the day.
Well spotted.
But Chloe Annett doesn't get any lines, doesn't explain why she did what she did, apart from what we are assuming is, she was experimented on as well. She's realised, and she's just started killing people. Although everyone she killed wasn't involved in the experiments. Yeah.
It's like proper, insane killer kind of vibes, isn't it?
Yeah. So Dr. Adams and Rose are in this odd embrace as she stabbed him and he's holding on to her. And I can't work out this bit. I don't know if you could. Did Dr. Adams grab her and threw them both off the thing, or did they go together?
I got the impression that it was a thing that he grabbed her and she did that.
Yeah.
But maybe the fact that we aren't sure says a lot. But the one thing I did like was that it kind of took a nod back to one of the lines that we noticed at the start, that she was like, you didn't tell me about this dream, but she knew she had it anyway because she was having it too.
Yeah, definitely.
That was actually quite clever. That's a nice little callback that I didn't spot, and perhaps I should have done.
Well, this is what I was saying earlier on. There's a few other bits in it, like she says, "Oh, Father won't let me forget," and things like that. So it sounds like Rose has known the truth the whole time. She's the one who's managed to adjust to it a lot better than everybody else has. Well, obviously not. She goes on a killing spree, but she knows what's going on better.
Yeah, she's hidden it better, rather than adjusted to it better.
Yeah. So Dr. Adams and Dr. Adams and Rose fall off the clock tower, and then we see a shot of them both lying dead on the ground, many, many feet below. However, this now leaves the 4 interconnected memory people looking at each other, and we realise we still don't know who killed the mother.
No.
So one of them is potentially a killer, but now they'll never know, because the person who probably does know, which is Dr. Adams, is now dead.
And that's so bleak.
Yeah. And the film ends sort of zooming out on these 4 with Jenny imploring them that they have to stick together now because they're all each other has. And we fade to black.
That ending was actually very, very good.
Yeah.
I thought that it didn't get resolved with a nice little neat bow.
Yeah.
Was good. And you don't see that in a murder mystery. Poirot gets everything fucking right by the end of a classic murder mystery. And we know exactly what happened in all the hokey ways we got there. We know about 90% of what happens, but the 10% is pretty big. And I like that.
Yeah.
That's a nice little naughties fuck you to the classic format. Yeah. And there's a lot to like about this.
Yeah.
I do feel like maybe not quite as bad as Dropship Project, but a couple of rewrites and tightening uppy bits and maybe shedding 10 minutes footage and making it a bit tighter could have made this better.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a very, I want to say, Twilight Zone kind of ending.
Yeah.
We kind of know what's going on, but everything's fucked.
Yeah, it's nicely odd.
Yeah.
Like the Twilight Zone as well. And I didn't hate this. I certainly didn't love this.
No.
But I'm glad I watched it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so that is The Asylum. Chloe Annett is in it, kind of.
She's the main focus in a weird way in the end.
It would have been nice to have had her in it more throughout, like in flashbacks or just cutaways to her or something like that, because then it's like you said, you completely forgot she was in it at one point. I'd kind of resigned myself, even though at the very beginning I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that Chloe Annett's the killer. But then there was nothing else in there to give me that feeling, because she doesn't turn up again until the very, very end. Which kind of telegraphed it even more for me then, that because they dropped the line of, there's a lot of, obviously this is an audio medium, but there's a lot of like staring off into the middle distance to punctuate a line. Like, there is turn one other. There's a lot of that acting going on in here, especially from Patrick Mower. And so that really punctuated that it's Chloe Annett. She doesn't even look particularly evil when it happens. She just looks kind of pissed off.
I mean, maybe that is it.
Yeah.
Maybe she is just pissed off.
Yeah.
The only other thing really that I wanted to mention was that, did it feel like the soundtrack felt dated for the era it was released to you? It felt like a very 70s, maybe early 80s soundtrack for a horror film that we got with this.
Definitely, but I think that was part of the choice, that they wanted to make it look like those horror films of the 70s, like the ones Ingrid Pitt would have been in back in the day. I did burst out laughing that the first time you go into the chapel, they play a slightly distinctly different organ piece of the da-da-da, da-da-da-da, just enough to make it different.
That's exactly where I thought, wow, this is 70s.
Yeah, but they never did anything like that again in the rest of the film. So it's weird. It's a hodgepodge, and like you say, it's probably about 3 drafts away from being decent.
Yeah.
Even if the acting's not spectacular, I think if the writing was a bit better, it would have done much better. And obviously, like, if you see the poster for this film, it's a very, very poor early Photoshop job. Robin has Squid's face on it, and his eyes are glowing, which makes you think there's going to be some kind of demon in it.
Yeah.
And there isn't. Chloe Annett's not even on it.
This wasn't the film I expected.
No. There is a second poster, which I tried looking for. I found a very, very low-res one of it, which is more like the Hammer horror, sort of that kind of thing. And I think if they'd used that instead, it would have made a bit more sense, but it hasn't. And it's got Chloe Annett on it as well. But yeah, it's... they just used this weird one. Basically, they used one that looks like a cheap DVD cover, which is what it is.
Yeah.
Right then, Mark. So that was The Asylum. Overall, what are your final thoughts on this?
We watched it because of Chloe Annett. We didn't get much Chloe Annett. It was okay. That's about all I've got for you. How about you?
I was actually pleasantly surprised. I did message you within the first sort of 10 minutes going like, this is awful, Mark. This is really bad. And then by the time it got to the sort of final third, I was actually quite enjoying it. And again, I think it's because I saw potential in it, which is what kind of elevates films for me sometimes. It's like, oh, this could have been good.
Yeah, I think we covered that with the needs a redraft and needs tightening.
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. I think there was potential in this, and films like that aren't unsalvageable.
No. I think if you were looking for something to just pass an hour and a half one evening and you fancy a bit of a laugh and trying to work out what's going on, by all means do stick it on. It's not a complete waste of your time.
No. I agree.
All that's left, Mark, is to sum things up. So where can people find you on the internet?
So if you go to Linktree, no, I'm taking the piss, I haven't got one of them. It's at Mark Adams HC on Twitter and Instagram. And I do a podcast about Chucky, at Chucky Vision on Twitter.
Lovely. Well, yep, you can find me at Linktree / I am Mr. Carl, where it's got all things going on around there. I'm currently in the process of sort of touring around the Midlands with House of Pain Wrestling as their ring announcer, which is going quite well. And I've just appeared this time. I've just appeared on Pick a Disc as part of the We Made This crossover party talking about Spitting Image.
Well, yeah, but you've also appeared on this, and by the time this airs, it will be like months ago.
Oh, okay. Oh, I better make some stuff up that I did in the previous months. I've climbed Ben Nevis. I've met the love of my life, and I ate the biggest portion of sausage and mash you've ever seen, like proper Beano-sized portion of sausage and mash.
Nice.
Yeah. All right, then. So do follow us at Red Dwarf Pod on Twitter. So, yeah, do check out the other members of Shipwrecked and Comatose on their podcasts. Matt's on Pick a Disc. Colin's on Free with this month's issue and We Dig Music. Mark is on Chucky Vision. And, yeah, check out Kurt on a variety of podcasts, actually. He's just launched
so many podcasts.
Yeah.
They used to joke about me and my many podcasts. Now it's Kurt. Yeah. He's got millions.
He's on the Xcast. He's on... he's just launched a Lost one that I can't remember the title of right now. But, yeah, go and check them all out. And give us a like and subscribe and leave a review for us here at Shipwrecked and Comatose. And
a good one.
A good one.
Not a bad one.
Yeah. Put Hello Mark in there because Mark does read the reviews. Yeah.
I try not to.
And until next time,
can't beat a good vestibule. That was even worse than Colin Baker.
I thought that was better than Colin Baker.
Shipwrecked and Comatose, a Red Dwarf podcast, was created and produced by Mark Adams and Kurt North. You can find us on Twitter at Red Dwarf Pod, and we are part of the We Made This podcast network.
Hello, and this is Chucky Vision on the We Made This network, the podcast for all things Chucky. I'm Dev Elson.
And I'm Mark Adams. We're two queer podcasters who love bloody horror,
camp comedy, gay romance,
and referencing icons like Freddy, Jason, and Brittany.
The Chucky films and new TV show deliver all of that, and there is still so much more to cover.
So if you want to play, find Chucky Vision on Twitter @ChuckyVision and on all good podcast providers.
And yes, the title is a Chuckle Vision pun.
Because why not?